So could Putin use Kaliningrad to strike Europe? Yes, of course. Whether it be in an offensive way or whether it just be a kind of major obstacle is perhaps harder to do. I mean, they already use it offensively in the way in which they have interfered with electronic magnetic spectrum. And in the event of a major conflict from there, the ability to strike from Kaliningrad rather than necessarily just from Russia itself proper would mean that a greater portion of particularly Eastern Europe would be threatened directly by Russian missiles and other attack vehicles. So after the recent incursion by the Russian drones into Poland, an increase of tension in that area, and there was open conversation last week about whether or not NATO should deploy further forward, whether or not they should even take over a no-fly zone in western Ukraine. And what the Russians have done by openly deploying Iskander, they've been talking about putting Iskander into Kaliningrad since 2008. So this has been a well-signaled move, if you like. It's indicating they can hit those targets if we chose so to do. Because they've already said that if the Western powers directly intervene in Ukraine, they would regard even us providing a defensive screen in the west of Ukraine as directly intervening in the war, then they would regard us as legitimate targets. By placing the Iskanders there, they can show us that they can hit those. So we're looking at the ranges of it. The range of the Iskander is about 600 kilometers, depending on which mark they're using. They probably use the most recent version of that. That covers most of Poland and covers Germany almost up to Berlin. It covers the whole of the Baltics and a fair part of eastern Ukraine as well. So yes, it is. It's a sort of counter-move threat to any potential move by the Western powers to provide direct support to Ukraine's defence of its airspace. The radar station Kaliningrad is an interesting one. I think there's not quite speculation. It's a major site. There's no question about it. But what it's going to be used for is unclear. It's a radar station, or is it a radio station? The technical intelligence individuals who have analysed it on open source, at least, are talking about it being potentially used for controlling submarines and such like, and in which case it's got a range over thousands of miles. But it could also maybe link to the radar and to missiles. But I think it's also perhaps just an indication of the way in which what is a very large site, is a large site, and is only probably put in place when they are dealing with very sophisticated weapons. It's an indicator of how important the Kaliningrad exclave is to Russia. So it's a more of a general indicator of that, rather than I think anything specific or additionally threatening to what they're doing. I'm much more concerned at the moment about the potential for, if you like, a deliberate provocation on the part of Russia in and around the Baltics, and then that leading to an attempt to recapture the Baltics for them. And I think that's the big concern. And of course, we've got this exercise going on at the moment, exercise Zapad, with Belarusian and Russian troops. In the past, they've used exercises as a means of building up forces and then not quite sending them home afterwards. That's exactly what happened in 21, 22, immediately prior to the invasion of Ukraine. I think that is exactly my assessment as well. And it's not just my assessment; it's the assessment of all the sort of frontline state prime ministers: Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, the Poles, and indeed the Swedes and the Finns. Their estimate is that Putin is prepared to directly challenge NATO anytime from sort of 2027 onwards. Now, these things aren't exact timetables, but that timeline, it seems to me to be not unrealistic. It has premises. There's assumption that there's some kind of sort of ceasefire in Ukraine, or some kind of frozen conflict in Ukraine. But even with a frozen conflict in Ukraine, or even one that's going to run down, he might well have the resources to be able to launch a second front into the Baltics itself. But it will take a bit of time, and the assumption is that somewhere around 2027 might be the time to do that, which of course is linked, as we know, with China's orders to its armed forces be prepared to take Taiwan by 2027. So we could be looking for a couple of rather fraught years ahead of us. The Russian Belarusian drills that are occurring at the moment. Now, in part, it's pre-planned. It's what they call exercise Zapad, and this is a twice every 2 years they have this kind of exercise. It shows the close cooperation between the two countries. As I say, Belarus is barely independent any longer from there. And I think in the past, what we have to be very wary of is that Russia has used such exercises as a means of building up its forces, because the exercising troops don't go home. So rather than be conducting an exercise and then dispersing, they stay in place. And in the past, what's happened is they use that as an opportunity then, as they did in February 22, to invade another country. And that's been a pattern that they have used all the time, with the excuse that we've told the allies, the Western allies, this exercise is taking place, therefore need not worry about it. So I think everyone's very wary of such exercises, not least which because the Russians routinely lie about the number of troops that are actually involved. And so they'll declare a figure that's below the official figures that we have for major exercises in Europe as a result of kind of Cold War measures. But they've got considerably more troops in place than they've actually used in the past. So yes, it is a worry. I would say that the intelligence services I would like to say they're all over it. I doubt that, but I think they're probably at least wary and aware of what is going on. But that's not to say that Russia couldn't then, if you like, continue the action beyond that, leave those troops in place, and then they are in a position then to strike against another part of NATO, particularly the Baltics, if they so chose. The overall view is we should be worried. I mean, I say that with a smile on my face, but I'm not really smiling. I think it is deeply concerning. I mean, I think with Putin, we have an opportunist. We have somebody who has a genuine belief. We may find it odd, but we have a genuine belief that Russia as a great power needs to be revived for the health of the world geopolitics from there. And here's a man who's prepared to use force. He's prepared to use force against his own people, against his enemies, and he's prepared to invade countries. Something we have not seen for a very, very long time. And I think our response up until now has been merely adequate, no more than that. In terms of supplies to Ukraine, generally speaking, we've been one day too late, $1 too little, and we've been slow to rearm ourselves as well. Talk that we've had from our own government currently that sometime by about 2035 we might get ourselves up to 5% of GDP being spent on defence and defence needs, frankly, is inadequate. There's no one way to put it. The threat is close, could be as close as 2027, in which case we need to react and respond accordingly. And currently, we're not.
Europe they're my friends, but they're buying oil from Russia. So we can't be expected to be the only ones that are, full bore. But Europe is buying oil from Russia. I don't want them to buy oil. And the sanctions that they're putting on are not tough enough. And I'm willing to do sanctions, but they're going to have to toughen up their sanctions commensurate with what I'm doing.